Tim Scott does some interesting tap dancing about how there's no racism in America. And he goes on one of his favorite slave promoting host show, Charlie Kirk. Here it is.
Tell us about some of these stories here, like abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison. I knew nothing about him before beginning to read your book. Tell us about it, Senator.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to do, one of the most controversial things I've ever said, I think, as a public official, is that America is not a racist country. And I was attacked vehemently in response to President Biden's comments and Kamala Harris's comments, and the whole world went crazy. And so when I wrote this book, I had that in the back of my mind. See, America, we certainly have an original sin. We all do. We were born into sin and conceived in wickedness in a way. The truth of the matter, though, is that we've always fought for our identity through the Declaration of Independence, that God gave us these inalienable rights that come from God, not from man. So I wanted to tell the story of a little known guy named William Lloyd Garrison, who fought tooth and nail for the freedom he believed only comes from God. And as a result, he was a journalist. Thank God for Holy Ghost-filled journalists. Back in those days, we could use some now. I wanted to tell the story about... We really do.
Put it up, full mass. Tim Scott condition has gone clinical. According to News One, Senator Tim Scott has been promoting his new book titled, One Nation Always Under God. Tim, you know that the terminology, the phrase under God was not adopted until 1954, which would mean by definition that it has not always been, well, the title of your book, sir. The title of your book. Predictably, he's still out here making his identity known as a Black conservative who believes emphatically that, quote, America is not a racist country. He's trying to sell books. And who better to make this point to than loud and proud white nationalist and MAGA-fied racist Charlie Kirk, whom doesn't have a college degree to his name. That's not an issue, but the fact that he will besmirch individuals who happen to have a college degree but black skin, that is the problem. That's the issue, okay? Let's look at Kirk's comments in the past. Here it is.
You really have to wonder, in fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. I don't want LaQuisha James.
They have that
comes
like pilot voice.
And she's just like, hi, ladies and gentlemen. Pray for me.
And the truth is, it's just, this is a creation that the left wanted. Because
and they think you can't say anything about it because they'll call you a racist. And this is where we really have to take the gloves off and say your name calling will not get in the way of people's safety at 35,000 feet. The Democrats, they're so despicable. The Democrats are not lifting a finger to remember the well over 100 people that have died in Texas Hill Country. What you are not being told by the media anywhere is that the death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI. In fact, if you want to actually get to the truth that Tucker was saying here, is that there is a disturbing, this is a fact, no one wants to say this, there is a disturbing pattern of blacks jumping people of all races in the urban corridors in America. That is a fact. So Scott Adams, the founder of the cartoon Dilbert, said, quote, if nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, then that makes them a hate group. Now, I don't love that. I understand the essence of what he's saying because it's just overgeneralizing And who's to know if this is the actual sentiment of all blacks in America? It certainly seems like it's heading that way. There is a lot of anti-white sentiment growing there. Patients of this, we're a truth-seeking show. But I can say declaratively, this guy is not worthy of a national holiday. He is not worthy of godlike status. In fact, I think it's really harmful. It doesn't faze me, as you well know. We did a whole show on MLK and the whole thing. And it's just so everyone knows. I called Pierre up before. You called it. We're like, hey, man, we're doing this. And you were like,
I was trying. I loved it though. I loved it.
You did? Well,
I love that you were bold, and
That's very sweet.
There's so many black conservative heroes. Like there's some. MLK is not. He's not God.
Well, he gets his own national holiday, higher approval rating than Jesus.
Charlie, with your level of talent mediocrity, the only person who we know for sure has a job because of the color of their skin is you. Yes. Zach Lindley of News One points out, just last year, Scott was celebrating America by claiming, quote, "We are living MLK's dream," end quote. Just over a year later, he's trying to have a kumbaya session with Kirk, who once told Uncle Ruckus acolyte Jason Whitlock that based on every objective analysis, Kirk said, MLK gave us more race focus and less emphasis on character and conduct. Scott sat down with the mediocre white male who hates Martin Luther King Jr., believes the exonerated five should be in prison even though they are the exonerated five, and is a proponent of the white nationalist great replacement theory, to talk about how racism in America is a thing of the past and a product of original sin that we've overcome. As I said, Tim Scott's condition has become clinical. All right, Yasmin, thoughts?
Yeah, so Uncle Tim over here, he never disappoints, right? South Carolina is so interesting to me because I want to love South Carolina, but the people make it very, very difficult. I've never been to Charleston, but I hear it's gorgeous. I used to love going to Hilton Head as a kid, saw my first alligator there, but something encouraging does seem to be happening in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham is up for re-election right now in the midterms, and he is being primaried by a very MAGA Republican, one of the architects of Project 2025, actually. But he also has a decent shot of being unseated by the Democratic candidate, Dr. Annie Andrews. You might remember her. She went viral a few months ago with her campaign announcement video. And even if she doesn't win, though, the fact that she is being taken seriously as a candidate is worth talking about, because even if she doesn't win, that is okay. Change doesn't happen overnight. And if you don't get it on your first try, you just try again. It's not like you just give up and say, well, we tried it and it didn't work, and South Carolina is a lost cause. Also, with South Carolina, it is a little bit interesting whenever you look at like the geopolitics of where it's located as far as its politics. Obviously, it's in the very, very deep South, but so is Georgia. Georgia is a very purple state, or it's considered to be. It's competitive between the Democrats and the Republicans. North Carolina is also somewhat competitive, but it is also one of the most gerrymandered states in the country. And then you have South Carolina that is like considered to be deeply red, but you have people there who are very, very supportive of a candidate like Annie Andrews, who is by all intents and purposes a progressive candidate. She is a very, pretty white woman, so she's palatable to the people of South Carolina. Was that racist? I don't know. I don't know how they feel down there, but if anyone can do it, it would probably be someone like her. So more power to her. And then if she can get Lindsey Graham out of there, then maybe Tim Scott is on his way out too. We can only hope.
We can only hope.